Good morning. My name is Teresa Lynn Delden Higgins. I'm the fourth born daughter to Jean Marie Weber Delden, loving wife to Gerald Delden, mother of 6, grandmother to 16, great-grandmother to 17. And it all started with this. If you don't know the story, it's 1951 and my dad is in study hall at Lakeshore High School, and he sees this cute girl across the room and he really wants to talk to her. So he takes the eraser and he throws it at her. And then it hit my mom by mistake. The rest, we say, is history. I don't know if I've ever thanked my dad for being such a lousy shot, or to thank God for that wayward eraser that day. My mom and dad were married for 61 years. They have a reputation as being very frisky and playful. With 6 kids, obviously that went a long way. As empty nesters, they would still run away to hotels and go on vacations and have a few beers on Friday nights and call it their frisky night, well into their 70s. Jean Marie Weber Delden was also known as Jeannie, Jeanity Jean, Jeannie Linguini, Pudge, Pudgy, stubborn German, Mom, Mama, Mama, Mommy, Ma, Grandma, Grams, Great-Grandma, Aunt Jean, Jean my sister, Mrs. Delden, Mama Bear, Bone Crusher, long story. But no matter what people called her, we all knew her as very upbeat and one of the kindest people that most people in this room had ever known. She was a sweetheart. She was an amazing woman. She was beautiful inside and out. My mother had a reputation of being soft-hearted. She would cry for many reasons. She'd cry when Ellen was doing something particularly touching that day on her show. She'd cry for commercials, greeting cards. She would even cry when people would call her out as being soft-hearted. But mostly she would cry when someone that she knew or that she loved was having a hard time or hurting. When her family was in conflict is when she would cry the most. Mom wore our pain and our trouble as her own because she loved us that deeply and that completely, endlessly and unconditionally. She would always cry more for us and for our pain and our trouble than her own, every time. My mom showed her love with food often. There are many stomachs in this room today that had their fair share of acres of rice pudding, dozens of Jeannie's Weenies, many cupcakes, truckloads of spaghetti and meatballs, and my mother would always make a pot of soup for the weary travelers who would travel from Florida, myself included. And when we would arrive at her house, there'd always be a pot of warm pasta fagioli, or pasta bean soup as she would call it, waiting for us. And after she got sick, she employed my sisters, Lori, Sherry, Cindy, and Catherine, to make sure that that soup was still there for us when we would come on our many visits to visit her as she was in her decline. My mom lived in a 5-mile radius, a bubble we called it. She was rarely east of Gratiot. But if you look around the room today, in that 5-mile radius, look at how many lives she impacted, how many lives she enriched. She had a way of making everybody feel special and feel loved. My mother experienced the world in a 5-mile radius of a bubble up until the time of Facebook. That expanded her world exponentially, and she was able to keep in touch with a lot of loved ones who lived further away and keep in touch with their lives. If you were on her special list for Facebook shares, you know about some of the more interesting posts she would share with us, and if you were on that list, you know exactly what I mean. Facebook became her lifeline as she started to fail. She spent hours and hours keeping in touch with everyone, and when her speech began to go, obviously Facebook was a great way for her to still keep in touch. I would like to thank all of my mother's special caregivers, full-time caregivers, Sherry, Lori, Cindy, Mark, and the people who came to help out also, Lorraine, Nicole, Kathy. Everybody did their little special part. If I'm leaving anyone out, I apologize. You know that every single one of you played an important part in my mother's life. It was interesting, though, that as my dad had spent many years of yelling at my mother, "Where are my socks? The kids are calling you. What's for dinner? Where's the remote?" Suddenly, he became the most amazing and the most caring caregiver that we had never known that he could be. We were quite amazingly shocked at my dad rising to the occasion. Again, to the caregivers who helped my mom out, Nicole, the way you handled her, you know my mom liked the way you handled her. Kathy, to keep her hair in good shape, because anyone who knew my mom knew that when she was having a good hair day, it was just a better day. I'd like to break from my original script at this point to mention the people who couldn't visit or who had a hard time visiting my mom as she was in decline. I want you to know that she understood it was hard to see her like that. It was extremely hard for us to see her like that, but it's a family thing sometimes that we gather around her and helped her out for the many times she had held us up. So it was our honor and pleasure to take care of her. But for those of you who couldn't visit, you know, we understand it was hard to see her that way. The diagnosis of ALS was shocking. It's an insidious disease. Why my mom, this woman, had to suffer this way, it seemed especially unfair, because she had spent her entire life giving us strength and taking care of us and inspiring us. But as the days went on, it was our honor and our turn to take care of her, and she had a hard time accepting people giving her love and care, but as we pointed out to her, she had done her fair share, and it was our honor and our pleasure to take care of her. It allowed us to return a small portion of the care and love she bestowed upon us all these years, and it was our pleasure to take care of her. Moving forward, I would like to solicit some play dates with my father, for my father. And I would like to solicit this as an open solicitation once again. My dad has quieter days ahead of him, and we know now that he spends many quiet nights alone. He is always open for visitors, loves to talk. He's doing really remarkably well these days, and if you like to go to the casino, call my dad, he's always up for that too. In closing, my mom was the glue that held our family together, and she has passed, but my mom's glue was super glue. She kept her family together. It was her biggest pleasure in life, and I believe it would be her dream and her wish and her legacy that we keep our family together. So to my siblings, my cousins, my aunts, her sisters, her friends, everybody who knew my mom and who is here today, my mom's legacy is her family. So let's let that legacy continue, and let's be there for each other. Let's cry for each other. Let's hold each other up. Let's be there together. And let's keep ourselves in touch always in her honor. My mom always was my moral compass, but these days I ask myself not just what would Jesus do, but what would Jean do? And I ask you to ask yourself that when things are going tough in your life. What would Jean do? Chances are if somebody was having a rough time, she'd make them a pot of soup, and she would make them a pan of rice pudding and try to make everything better that way. My mom is our angel now, and she's not really gone, because the welling up in your hearts that you feel today is her love for you. She was our sunshine, our only sunshine. She made us happy when skies were gray. I think she knows how much we love her. Please don't let my mom's memory fade away.